Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of JKL Media, where three friends get together and talk about all things pop culture. I am the J in JKL Media, Jesse. The K is the lovely and talented Karen.
Hello. And I'm also red.
Yes. And the L is the lovely and talented Lou.
I've never been described that way before, but I'm flattered. Hello, everyone.
It's true.
And we are continuing our Severance journey. So we're going to get on the elevator and get ready to talk about the third episode of season 2. And that was named Who is Alive? Who is Alive originally aired January 31st, 2025. It's my turn to lead the discussion. And I got to tell you, I just am loving this series and was especially happy to see one of our guest stars, Gwendolyn Christie, because I just think she's amazing in anything she does. And she just was very kooky in this one. There's a couple other guest stars that made me very happy to see. And so let's do quick around the table. Karen, thoughts?
Okay. Don't hate on me for this. I like the first two episodes better,
Okay.
but that's not to say that this wasn't great because it was great.
Hmm.
There were some things in it that kind of made me tilt my head, like the RCA dog. But overall, I think it's continuing with this uh, great storytelling, great acting. The cast is just stellar in this, and everyone's in character, and I just love it.
Yeah. Lou?
Yeah, I kind of agree with Karen. I think I like the first two episodes better too, though I have to say the last scene with Mark getting reintegrated was totally unexpected and mind-blowing, and I'm sure we'll talk about that later on. You know, sometimes because you don't know the overall arc of the series, it's kind of hard to tell, like, is all this stuff relevant or what red herrings are they throwing in here? The goat room was totally bizarre. It felt very Monty Python-esque to me.
Not llamas or
Right.
red goats.
And the other scene that really intrigued me was the one between Miss Colbell or Harmony in the parking lot.
I loved seeing Gretchen, the great Merritt Weaver. She's
Oh,
one of my great favorite character actors. Yeah,
I almost rioted when they killed her in The Walking Dead.
yeah. I think the first two, I agree with you, were better episodes, though this one I feel like moved the story along in interesting ways. You wonder, are you just effing with us?
Right,
Right? Like, goats are this show's version of polar bears.
right.
It ended
Yeah,
up being the polar bears meant nothing really big at all, right?
means something though.
Yeah. So, all right, we start out with this is the oddest thing, right? Mrs. Cabell sleeping on the side of the road.
In a
And
Fargo-esque
yes,
scene. Yeah.
beautiful scene.
Oh my
Uh,
God. It's one of
because
those things that it makes the show like out of time.
yeah.
They
Well,
have
and
smartphones, but all the cars are from like the 80s.
right, I went on a deep dive of when did they quit making the side windows in cars and what were they called? And they were the vents. The whole purpose is back when cars did not necessarily have air conditioning, you open that little
The little,
side window,
right,
the
the
little
little
vent,
triangle,
and it would bring in a lot of air to the car without
especially
to,
I
yeah,
mean, the driver.
yeah,
And then we had one where there was a little version of that in the back seat
right.
as well.
Yeah. So this is
Some people don't know that cars had those.
somehow we got onto Chris and I talking about Michael Jordan's father being killed.
Right.
And Chris is like, it just makes no sense. You're Michael Jordan's father. Why would you go to a rest stop to sleep? Just get a hotel room. And I said, well, back in the day, that's what rest stops were for, Chris. You
Right.
would park and then you could take a cab nap.
Right.
No way. I'm like, yeah,
Yes.
that's
Yes
rest
way.
stop is, and
Right.
so I mean, he really just had no concept. He was thinking rest stop is a restroom
There
stop.
weren't nearly as many hotels.
Right. Yeah.
So
So I did love that image of that big wide scope and the white and the car driving by.
yeah, yeah.
So so yeah, and she ends up right, she was going to go back to the city, she ends up taking a U-turn. So I thought I'll just go through all the way where she and Helena have a discussion, and I don't understand why Mrs. Cobalt thinks she has more
Corbel.
leverage. Yeah, Cobalt has
Corbel.
leverage. Corbell, why she thinks she has she thinks she has more leverage than she actually does in my mind. So let's start with you, Karen. Thoughts on that?
We're always the star of our own story. And she was called in to be asked back to be on that new panel. So I do think that she believes they need her. And so they're going to do what they can to keep her. And she was sadly mistaken in this case. I want to mention one thing about the whole sequence with her driving and turning around. One of the songs that opened the episode was by the Stone Roses, sorry, Love Spreads. And I think it has nothing is done that's not deliberate in this show. And when you look at the lyrics for this, it's about a Black woman who was crucified. And there was a lot of symbolism around Black people in this episode. And also, the Messiah is my sister. Ain't no king, man, she's my queen. So they said sister, and we had just seen Harmony look down when she's at the sign for the city that she's traveling to. There's like a respirator hose next to her that she touches, and it has another Corbell name on it, a woman. And it was also at the Kier shrine that she had at her house last season.
Or did she have a baby?
Or, there's a lot of different connotations. Is it her mother? Is it her sister? But it definitely has something to do with her devotion to
Yeah.
Lumen. Because the fact that she puts it in the front seat while she's driving, there's nothing else in the front seat but this. So I think that this song that she plays, and she turns it on in the car, has a lot of lyrics that make you think about where the show is going. So I urge people to look up the lyrics to that song. But I mean, she's one of the people that I hated her in season 1 because of her compliance to everything, and knowing that she wasn't severed also bothered me, made me angry with her. And I started to have sympathy for her near the end of last season, but I think that she is definitely being mistreated. Even after the fact that she kind of saves the day when Helena, sorry, is making her impassioned speech that she shouldn't be making at the benefit at the end of last season. And I think she should be more lauded for that. But the fact that they find out, she's interfering in Mark's Audi's life and, all that, it outweighs that for them. And I think they see her as not loyal to Kier. And that scene between her and Helly in the parking lot was a little heartbreaking. And again, we see Mrs. Corbell is speaking in vernacular terms. She has a more relaxed tone, even though she is saying things in a different way than we would say them. Whereas Helena definitely has that very affected speech where she is definitely trying to show that she is superior. So I think there's a lot of things that go into those sequences. And I don't remember the name of the town that she's going to. It has salt in it. It's not a real town. So it's another way of showing us that this is outside of our world.
I wrote down Salt Neck.
Okay,
Yeah,
Salt Neck.
yeah,
I had Salt Lick in my head.
yeah.
So yeah, Salt Neck. It's not a real town. Of course, everyone goes and sees, oh, this isn't a real town. Let's speculate on it. I don't really care. The only thing that I care about is the fact that she was going there. So there's some significance to that town. And when she sees the sign, that's her impetus for turning around and going back to Lumen. So I do think that I mean, again, there's nothing that doesn't have significance in this show. So showing us the name of that town is definitely some kind of touchstone for us. Um, a lamppost to hang things on. So many, I mean, there's so many things that go into just tiny little scenes that, we talk about color in regards to the show as well. And all of her stuff was either blinding white or incredible darkness, because when she shows up at Lumen, it's nighttime, or very early morning. So again, it's that kind of color and then absence of color that really draws you in and puts you in this kind of mood as to where the scenes are taking place.
Lou, how about you?
Well, Karen did a pretty thorough job there.
Yes, a great
I'm
job.
Salt's Neck, I noticed that sign and the breathing tube also. So the shows, see, and that's the lure of watching the show is you don't know what's relevant and what's just a red herring. So whether these are going to amount to anything, and the song, as Karen mentioned, or just there to, lure you in and keep you entranced, it's hard to say. I think that the landscape when she was in the car represents her state of mind. I think it's bleak and desolate, and I do think that that kind of symbology is not too hard to lay a claim to. I think other people would probably pick up on that as well. The the other thing that I keep coming back to is in the last season, she had that one scene in her house where she had sort of like a shrine, like the
Yeah, the Kier
Cobalt,
Shrine.
the Kier Shrine.
Yeah.
So her personality seems to be one that's come through some sort of like cult, and now she feels like she's been booted out and she's trying to get back in. So she's going to be a difficult force for the Lumen Industries to deal with because there's nothing that will really motivate her except her devout fanaticism for the Kier philosophy. So they can't bribe her, giving her the job that they gave her on the Severance Advisory Council, which, if you kind of sound it out, says sack, which, makes me think of she's been sacked. So,
Mm-hmm.
these mind games that the show's playing with you are ongoing. So, do we want to talk about her scenes with Helly, or do you want to leave that for later?
No, go ahead. Rock it.
Okay. All right. So the back and forth between the two of them is interesting, and in that we're dealing with, we have unreliable narrators, both of them, or viewpoints in the show, because we don't know with Helena if she's putting on a front to deal with Cobell the least painful way possible for both of them. But there is this sort of each party is looking down on the other party kind of moral stance. And it's fascinating to watch the two of them trying to maintain this cold civility between the two of them, but underneath it, neither one of them really likes the other or thinks much of the other. So there's this tension going on between the two of them. And I found like the board is becoming then this real big another thing. Like it might be like the goats. We might not ever find out who is on the board, or even if there is a board, if it's one person or many. We might not never get the answers to that question. So it's a great storytelling device to let the viewers' minds percolate over all the different possibilities of what's going on. I I'm not sure how to interpret at the end that Cobell decided to not go in and talk to the board and decided to run away? Was she afraid that this was actually just a pretense and that they were going to in some way maybe sever her? I'm not sure, but her reaction and her running away uh, was quite interesting. And what was with the dude in the background? I think Cobell was going to go along with meeting with the board, but as soon as she saw that guy, whatever he represents is something that she's not comfortable with or is afraid of. And that's, I think, seeing that guy was when she decided to leave. So if this background character at the moment comes to the forefront later on, but again, the show's just got, you're questioning everything that's happening in every scene now, and that's a captivating place for an audience member to be.
It makes me wonder if she feels safe talking to Helena alone, but not safe if there's someone who could like wrangle her into a car or something like that.
Yep. Who knows?
I thought it was interesting too because I I realize that you were Severus, right? But how weird is it that when Helly leaves and she becomes, you know, Helena, she has a driver waiting for her.
Yep.
So, but then I realized that if Mark or Dylan or Irving saw her, and I know they stagger people leaving, but you would see, oh, there's an executive, and you wouldn't know that's someone you work with.
Right.
Hmm.
And I think,
And that's all he might be.
yeah,
Right. And
um,
like I said, there may be that thought that I didn't
mhm.
notice him, but there's someone now that could overpower me.
Yeah, and I don't know. It's almost like Harmony is a true believer.
Yes,
Hmm.
Nothing more dangerous than a true believer.
absolute.
Right.
So, yeah, because she did have that shrine.
Yeah.
And then, she lost it when they kind of moved against her.
Hmm.
So, yeah, it would be curious if they would explain, and they may never, why she was, okay, let's talk to the board. And then when they were going to do that, she backed off.
All right.
Is that she's having second thoughts? Is she suspicious that it's really not the board? Is there something going on that if I'm back in Lumen, then I've lost all my leverage? I don't know. There could be none of that. It could be all of that. It's just a really strange, kind of dynamics we have.
Yeah.
So many possible connotations.
Yeah. And you've touched upon one of I think the big sticking points for me now, right now with the show is, okay, so we know that the time frame between the first and second season is pretty compressed now. It's actually just been like a week instead of the 5 months that they were led to
Yeah.
believe. But still, that overtime contingency time period of 39 minutes, both halves know what the other half knows
Hmm.
during that, and they retain those memories whether they're inside or outside. So my question now is, the Egan family's got to be pretty famous. Helena's got to be a known a known social figure. How is it that the other three don't recognize her as an Egan? Like Mark's got this mission that he wants to save his wife. Like, why aren't they getting together in their outing time? Because they know who each other is now.
Do they?
So,
It looks like they don't.
because they have that overlap time period of 39 minutes where the both halves know
Yeah.
each other. So why aren't
It
they talking to, like, they just ask, well, what did you do? Like, what did you see? Like, why don't they also ask, what's your name? Where do you live? Like,
Yeah.
like,
it really does make me wonder if they did something to reset their chips.
yeah, no,
Well, and the other thing is when would they have seen Helena when they were in that? Because Mark was in a meeting, so he never saw her. Yeah.
They would have
they,
knowledge of her
yeah,
Yeah.
as
but
part of the Egan family.
Yeah.
would Mark?
Right.
No,
At
I think
least not anymore.
the 39 minutes they do.
No, I don't think so. Yeah,
Mm,
because they just became any Mark was outside. He
Oh, there
doesn't.
wasn't overlap. That was just any Mark
Yeah,
seeing that tiny bit of information, and he wasn't getting the same information that Audi Mark had.
yeah,
So they didn't overlap? Is that?
yeah. That's what
Yeah.
I'm thinking. Yeah,
well, another interesting question.
yeah. Well,
Yep,
yeah, we'll have to rethink that.
definitely.
So, were you? I was very confused about Mark doing the timing. I didn't
Mm,
understand what he was trying to do at all. And at the end, he's trying to burn a question on his image, like back in the days when you used to have flash bulbs on a photo,
you get
you
the
would
after
still have
image.
dots in your eye.
Yeah,
I did not know that's what he was trying to do. Lou, did you catch that at all?
no, I didn't. And it seemed very, yeah, it was a very strange try to be solution to try to get a message inside to his innie. And I also thought that the message was rather cryptic. That's the
Right?
episode title,
Yeah,
Who is Alive? Like, what is that going to tell your innie? Like,
yeah,
I don't understand what the purpose of that message was. So,
Right.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
What significance is that going to have? And I think the question was brought up in the episode, what is your innie going to do? How's he going to get a message back to you?
yeah,
And they go,
And
that's his problem.
and I mean, it's a valid question.
yeah.
And
Like,
just brushes it off.
why didn't he say like Miss Casey is alive
Mhm.
or
Right.
Yeah.
like
Well,
who
and
is alive is so
I think that
ambiguous.
any Mark would recognize that he said she's alive and then switched back. So by seeing that, there would be the next conversation is she's alive. Who's
Right.
alive?
Right.
Right? They're trying
But
to have the
still
conversation. Yes. It is a yeah, but
cooperate
mhm,
without knowing what the other one is saying.
yeah.
And it doesn't have to be like who is alive, who is dead.
Oh, I'm
It's
just thinking
weird.
now because you guys just brought up the Jesse brought up the thought that they don't have overlap. So Audi Mark might not remember now who, but his sister, he's talked to his sister about this. So
Right.
yeah,
Mhm.
but he might think, he's trying to think, well, who's still alive? He's asking is any Mark, and any Mark is supposed to get back to him the message that his wife is still
Somehow,
alive.
yeah, saying that yeah, your wife is.
That's what's going on there. So that
And
means that any Audi Mark doesn't
Yeah.
remember what happened with any Mark, which is
Hmm.
interesting because when they're inside the Lumen, they're searching for Miss Casey and they're talking, and he and Helly are talking about the fact that his wife is still alive. So
Yeah.
and
yeah, because he saw
it's
the
really
picture.
confusing, right?
He saw the
Yeah.
picture.
So Mark should know that his wife is alive because Irving knows about Bert, Dylan knows about his family. So so how can
Well,
they not
the
remember or
reason
know who each
um
other is?
we don't know if Audi Irv knows about Bert
No, we do.
and when he was the innie.
Right. Right. We don't know if Audi
Yeah.
or knows about Bert.
And the reason
So
Dylan knows is because it happened at his house.
his innie
Okay,
saw.
so let's clarify something because I think we're all talking or taking the overtime contingency, what happened differently. To
Okay.
me, when they went in the overtime contingency, both Innie and Audi were together. It wasn't
Nope.
just that Innie Mark was out in the outside or Audi Mark was an inside. It's that both of them are coexisting, sort of like in a reintegration phase.
I don't
I do
think the
not
chip
believe that.
I don't think the chip can do that because they have to do a lot to reintegrate. You saw that in this episode. I think what happened was it flipped the
Yeah.
personalities. And so their innie was the only one that was there when the overtime contingency happened. So any Mark, any Dylan, any Irving, only those three because we know Helena is different. Um,
Okay. Yeah, I think you're right. So that makes the
yeah,
who is alive question more sense now.
Yeah,
because
You know?
he,
Yeah, he
right,
because
doesn't know who's alive,
yeah,
right?
right.
because remember,
But he had that conversation with Devin.
any mark
Yeah, because Devin told him, you held the picture of your wife up and said she's alive.
Right.
or
So
And
let's
said
investigate that.
the picture and you
Right,
said someone's alive, and
right.
they are
right,
thinking it's the baby because remember he didn't recognize his sister. He
right, right.
was he was in love with Rickon the same way if I had met Stephen King in person, like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm meeting you, right?
Yeah.
And so they have not, and which is why this end episode, kind of jumping to the end, where they show those two different lines and
Yep.
they're merging it, where
Yep.
Yeah,
the integration is going to be where Innie and Audi become united and
Right.
they will both know each other.
right.
Right.
What's
And they
going to
have
be
to
it?
look there.
Yeah, and you wonder personality wise who's going to take control or what, and is
Mm,
it a third personality that we're
mm.
Right.
getting?
Okay.
Yeah,
See,
That's
this is
scary.
great that we're talking about this.
Well, that's
yeah,
the whole point of water
Yeah.
cooler conversations,
Yeah.
yeah,
right?
Yeah. So, because I made an unfounded assumption that they were coexisting
yeah,
during the OTC, but they weren't.
hmm yeah. They have a sketch of Miss Casey,
That's
and it
still
appears,
murky for me too, by the way, Lou. I
yeah,
do believe that they did not overlap.
yeah.
Okay.
And so,
I'll recalibrate.
yeah,
Mhm.
any mark is owes it to Audi Mark to figure out what's going on, is what he
Right,
says, right?
right.
Yeah.
And so, did anyone else feel that as Helly and Mark are going together, they wanted to kiss again? Do you feel like there's
Yes.
that? Yeah,
Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah,
But now that he knows that someone in his world is his wife, he hesitates.
right. And so we do have an interesting triangle, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's the
It's a
most
quad,
unique.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Because Helly and Helena are kind of one person.
Well,
And
yeah.
I think this episode led more to the idea that she is severed to me.
Oh,
What do
yeah.
you?
But
Um,
she has access to
Mhm.
what's going on as she's
Yeah,
yeah.
learning.
This is the deliciousness of the series, because if you just take it at face value that she's severed, and her reactions and facial expressions are like kind of over, like she's really becoming invested in Mark. But if
hmm
she is not severed, then her reactions are like, is she manipulating him? And like she's trying to push this relationship. Whereas the other one, if she's severed, then it's happening organically. So
yeah,
there's two sides of this coin, and I'm not sure which way it's going. I much prefer that she is severed, because if she's not
hmm
severed, then she's really manipulating him, and somehow this must be playing into this whole Cold Harbor
yeah,
scenario that they keep talking about, that we don't know what the purpose of that is yet. So that's the strength of this series, is now you have to evaluate each scene in so many different ways that you're not sure which one is right now.
And
hmm
which one is more prevalent and which one has more weight. It really changes. And I think that the outside Helena, the Audi, definitely wants to foster that relationship with Mark. And whether she has an impression of that when she goes to be her innie as a whole, it's just, it colors all different ways. And I don't want her to be the villain. We liked Helly last season and we
Yeah.
yeah,
related. So if she's the villain, that makes me sad.
yeah,
So I do
hmm
want her to be severed.
yeah. So let's spend a few times. We're going to get to the goats, I promise.
Yeah.
He doesn't want to go join the rest of them because he's, doing his work. I've read somewhere that that's because getting to see his family is the biggest finger trap and, a waffle party in the world, or whatever reason he's doing it. Um, so, and he meets his wife. And as we've already talked about, the Merrick Weaver, who is a wonderful character actor, has been in tons of stuff. Um, in plays her, and I thought a really fun kind of role. So, Lou, let's start with you. What do you think of Dylan, and let's go all the way through where we see outside Dylan, right? With the kids going crazy, and you're like, I don't know how to make cookies.
But more
Yes,
expensive, I guess.
yes.
They look like they're
Uh,
pinching pennies.
yeah,
Yeah.
So they're living in a duplex or a row house or something like that. And she looks like she's a security guard.
it does look like that.
Is she a security guard at Lumen Industries or?
No,
Oh, that would be funny.
I don't think she is.
But
That there are people saying that she might be a first responder of some sort.
oh,
Okay,
okay,
all
cool.
right.
But
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
I'm
Lou,
still
yeah, please.
So their relationship, Dylan and Gretchen, is again ambiguous.
Hmm.
I definitely feel like they love each other. I don't doubt that. But her demeanor at Lumen is quite a bit different than at home. At home, she's a lot more brusque with him, and a little more exasperated. At Lumen, she's trying to be more compassionate and understanding, and trying to not handpick him, I guess you could say, because he keeps on saying, "Well, am I a screw up? Am I a loser?" And she says, "No, you just never found the right thing for your talents yet." So that whole dynamic is interesting. And then when Dylan asks her when at his home how the visit went, and she's just going, "Oh yeah, it was okay." So it's kind of like,
Yeah.
yeah,
yeah.
you think that would be a big talking point um, between the two of them, between any two people, for if you were meeting another version of the person that you're with that doesn't have the emotional the baggage. Be that good or ill that you would have in a relationship like that. So the way that she just brusquely went over that again, planting these seeds of is she doing this out of free will or is she being coerced into it? Or is she part of this whole Lumen plot of this whole Cold Harbor thing? I find their dynamic quite interesting. I have never seen this actor before. You've both
Mm.
seemed to know her quite a bit. I might have seen her in something, but I don't remember. But she seems like the kind of woman that would be able to have the empathy and patience to handle somebody like Dylan.
But also strong, I think.
Yes, and it was I love the beat when she was leaving Lumen and they didn't know how to
Yeah.
say goodbye. Like, should they just shake hands or should they kiss or should they hug? And she took it upon herself to give him a hug. So I thought that was nice. And the look that she gives as the door's closing behind her has got me wondering, like, what is she really thinking about this whole thing? So my opinion of the character evolved between the Lumen scenes and their home scenes. And I like, came away with the fact that I do believe that she loves him, but there's a bit more tension in their relationship in the real world than she let on.
Hmm. Karen?
I agree. I do think that what's her name? The kid that's the supervisor of the
Miss Wong?
floor. Thank you. Yes. Huang. She breaks into their conversation and says, remember, you can't get into any details
Yeah.
about whatever. I think that she's had to sign an NDA
Yeah.
saying that she can't talk about the Audi with the any and she can't talk about the any with the Audi.
Yeah,
And I don't think Dylan knows that,
yeah,
Yeah.
but I think that the way that she's brushing it off is her way of pushing that away so that she doesn't have to confront that issue.
yeah.
And again, it's reading into stuff, but they do drop that little hint in there with we're watching you
Yeah.
to make sure you don't drop any information. You don't, it's like,
Hmm.
when you see someone who's in jail, they don't want you to do certain things. So they watch the whole interaction. Lou just moved his camera all around and it's very distracting. He wants us to see Adam Scott behind him. Sorry about that.
No,
I do. I love that actress. One of her standouts, like I mentioned before, is The Walking Dead, where she was such an interesting and strong character in the show. And that they killed her off was, I mean, it was friendly fire even that killed her off. I felt like it was unnecessary. It made me very angry because I really loved seeing her there. So anytime I get to see her in something else, I think of it as kind of a bonus. I wouldn't say to Lou, go watch that because she's so entrenched in the Walking Dead story. You'd have to watch way too much to get that.
yeah,
But yeah, she's great. Every time I see her in something, I'm thrilled. And I think she played this perfectly, where she's probably had to sign some NDA, and so she's very tentative. She doesn't know quite what to talk about with any Dylan. And she knows she can say certain things and can't say other things. And I think when she says, I love you to him, it hurt her that he just didn't know what to say back.
right.
And that was heartbreaking as well. And I love that she had a see-through purse.
Yeah,
And he says, oh, cool bag.
yeah.
He's like, well, it's not my purse. So,
We live on a ranch.
right. Because it's one of those throwback photos.
Yeah, where
Um,
you did.
and
Mhm.
I also think he is very taken aback to learn that he is thought of as kind of an F up.
Yeah, successful.
Right. Because as an innie, they've always made their quotas.
Yeah.
He gets this whole treatment of, hey, you did something great. Let's give you a bonus.
Hmm.
And so he's not a F up as an innie. So hearing that, I think, was disappointing for him. And
Hmm.
so there's a lot of stuff went on, and we didn't even get to see them really talk. We just
Hmm.
got a few little pieces here and there, and mostly seeing their dynamic and how different it is from
Yeah.
how they are outside. I agree with you, Lou. She's had it with him right now, at least in that scene.
Yeah.
She's
Yeah.
ready to hand off the kids, and he's still asking her questions. And
Magazine and like, hey,
right,
come on,
do your job.
yeah.
Yeah, and I completely understand that as someone who lives with someone who's similar.
Yeah, she played a very small part, but a good part. She was a major part of Nurse Jackie, which I did not
Mm.
watch because it was just too depressing to me. My wife loved that series. I just didn't care for it at all. She played an assistant on the Aaron Sorkin show that Studio 60.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, and I liked her in
I
that Studio
remember that.
60 on the Sunset Strip. She's a very likable character actor. And yeah, I think that you can love your spouse, but at the same time recognize that, and he lost his job and you saw how he yelled at her, read the room, I would have picked up the phone.
Yeah,
And I think she knows he needs this job. They need it financially, and he needs it because he has not been successful in the outside world.
Right.
So I think that's one of the reasons why she doesn't rock things too much because she
yeah,
wants to make sure this is working well. And yeah, when she says, you don't really know me, and then when she's like, I love you out of habit, and I don't know if anyone else has, but I have done this without thinking, said, I love you to someone when I'm hanging up, that I went, I'm sorry, just out of
right.
habit. This is, I'm saying goodbye, and and like, oh no, I care about you too, Jesse. So
I
yeah,
also want to mention, like, I don't think she was totally comfortable with the situation, and she slipped up because she mentioned the Milchek's first name, Seth,
Right,
right?
yeah,
right.
hmm
Yep.
yeah. And so,
And new girl, by the way.
okay,
She played one of Schmidt's girlfriends.
yeah. So I do think it is. I love that subplot that Dylan is trying to figure out, because he has a totally different world than what he thinks he had, but in a lot of ways it's a better world.
Right.
You
He
know,
feels like
and
his innie is maybe side of him.
the spokesperson from the board, Natalie, right?
Yeah.
Shows up and he is just, they want me to do a any only edition and look how wonderful. And I just thought that, you know, his sister, right? That, she's just looking, at like, why Devin is like, why are you here, bitch? And
Right.
why are you talking, right? And I wonder, I'm sure she loves Rickon, but I sometimes think she doesn't like him very much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Karen, let's talk about that little dynamics.
Man, Rickon is something else.
Yeah.
He is the epitome of the hero of his own story.
Yes.
Yeah, and oh, he's so delighted to hear that the innies just they almost worship him. And of course, not only is he delighted, but he's not surprised. Yeah, he knows that people love him and his book. Natalie has a
Yep.
pretty big part in this episode.
She does.
Yeah, she
Yeah.
does. I mean, we've seen her several times.
Yeah.
She's in significant scenes.
Yeah.
And I also thought that it was funny that any Mark is astounded that his brother-in-law is Rickon. And
And that he admires him,
right,
right? Like he's like,
exactly.
no,
Right.
Yeah.
this
And
guy
they
is an
also,
idiot.
he and Devin, when they talk in this episode, they kind of badmouth Rickon, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
And I love that. Devin does recognize not only is he imperfect, he's really irritating and full of himself.
Yeah.
But I do think that there's love there.
Yes. I do.
I don't know what kind it is
Mhm.
because there are different kinds of love.
Yeah.
He is the father of her child.
Yeah.
So there's that. They've had a good enough relationship to have a baby together. They were married before the baby. So
Yeah.
it's not a factor in them getting married. And I still have a head scratcher thought that why are they together? Because it doesn't make sense to me. And I like that she's now realizing she can't talk to her partner about what's happening. There's no way because diametrically opposed in his thinking about Lumen. He is a Kier, not a fanatic, but he's a true believer again, I think. And he is just delighted for Mark that he gets to work at Lumen. He is thrilled that they're reading his book and he's happy to do something for them. I really do think that he is all in when it comes to Lumen and what they do. And I think he maybe played a part in Mark being severed, that he said, hey, maybe this is a good opportunity for you. So does that mean he's part of the conspiracy? Not necessarily, but I do think that he loves Lumen. He's all in. He's like an Apple person.
Mhm.
He worships at the altar of Kier, essentially. And I don't think Devin does.
I did not get that feeling. I got more just the reason why is because he's heard that the innies think so much of his book that now then he's become happy with them. Your thoughts,
Well,
Luke?
last
Yeah.
season he was thrilled about Mark being an innie. He talked about that a couple times. So
Yeah.
He's a hard character to nail down because is he just naturally oblivious to his buffoonery, or is he playing a part? Because, like when Devin asks, well, how do you think that the book got into the innies in the first place to Natalie? And Rick says, oh, we're way past that. That's kind of like, but no, we're not. We shouldn't be. Lumen definitely shouldn't be. The same like when Hobel tells Helly they should find out how Dylan got hold of that security card to get into the room to run the OTC. So again, the show is leaving things ambiguous for the viewer to decipher on their own. And right now, I'm still up in the air about whether or not Rickon is as dumb as he seems to be, or if he's just playing a part.
or
Okay.
both.
I think he just, as you said, he definitely is the star of his own story.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, he is the star of his own movie. and that's all it's about,
Right, right.
kind of thought, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
All for you bettering yourself as long as it's through him.
Yeah,
Because
exactly.
his book,
Yeah.
but he's
So,
happy that you
The,
can
the,
take his
the
yeah,
world
advice.
according to Rickon.
yeah. So let's talk about Goat World. I have questions.
Yeah, who
I
doesn't?
have questions about why they are raising goats, but my one of my main questions is, are the people taking care of the goats severed? And if
Mm.
so, how do you get dirty and look feral each day when you go through that? Or do you work shift work in the goat where you work 30 days on, 30 days off, right? And that's how it works. Similar like if you worked offshore
Sure.
or, like on a rig. So, Karen, thoughts about the goats?
Yeah, I have very complicated thoughts about the goats. First of all, they missed an opportunity,
Very nice. I
but
love it.
there's a lot of things about this area that are weird. First of all, the mini hallway that you crawl
Yes.
through. I guess it's like a simulacrum for a vent that you would crawl through, but it looks exactly like a hallway. And the fact that there's poop on the ground
Yes. Be
as you
careful,
walk
there's
through.
poop.
Right. So they're telling us that the goats go through this little hallway. It's
Hmm.
not for people, it's for the goats. And I think they're severed because they have beliefs that they wouldn't have if they're not severed,
Hmm.
as to, why don't they have pouches? Because they're told they have pouches. People
And
outside the
that's a callback from the first season.
right. And they're on the severed floor, quote unquote.
Right.
So I do think they're severed. And I I have lots of questions. Why does she think that they're coming to kill her? I mean, that's a huge.
Mhm.
Why is that? Why have you been sequestered so much that you think people are going to kill you?
Yeah.
Everybody seems to have some kind of injury, or at least, some of them have some kind of injury, which I think is weird. The most surreal frame, and I was trying to find it, is when Helly and Mark are standing in the center of the room, and you can see that guy in the goat costume behind them, just
Yeah.
looking on like some kind of specter. It's very weird. And the fact that it's like a hilly room and it's inside, it's like in a big boardroom. It
Yeah.
is the weirdest, most surreal scene this show has ever done. Because when they show the goats in season one, they're just in a regular room.
Like the guy is feeding them.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not in like a hilly kind of
No.
farm atmosphere, which this is strange. And like last season, there are assumptions about like suits coming to see you. Um, they're not ready for you to take yet, he says in
Yeah.
last season, because they're baby goats.
Right.
Um, is he talking about taking them to the goat room, or is he talking about taking them somewhere for experiments, or and
Sacrifice?
right, exactly. So, what is the difference between the baby goat room and the adult goat room?
Not
I
have that on my bingo that we, the baby goat in the adult rec room.
Oh, are different?
No, I did not
Oh,
have that.
I'm sorry.
I'm laughing because
I
it's appropriate, right?
I follow people on TikTok that have like baby animals, foals
Hmm.
and stuff.
Yeah.
And some of my favorite ones are baby goats because they're so cute. And like even adult goats are adorable. I love Gwendolyn Christie. She's so great.
Mm.
Everything I've seen her in as well is
Yeah.
amazing. In the Sandman,
Played Lucifer.
uh,
Yeah.
she's just fantastic.
Yeah.
So I love her a lot. And the way she played this kind of disheveled woman, that she's in charge of this floor, but she also doesn't, she's disconcerted by everything that's out of her purview. She doesn't know what these people are doing coming into
Yeah.
her domain. And
Yeah.
I love that she's standing on the hill
Yeah.
with the cowbell as her weapon.
Hmm.
It evokes a certain feeling, and I really am curious as to what is going on with the goats.
Yeah.
She also mentions that, the Latin word that she's using is nurturing mammals. So
Hmm.
it's a nurturing environment.
Lou.
Yeah, this was the strangest part of the episode by miles. Very Monty Python-esque. I don't know why. It's almost like when she was ringing that bell, I almost thought expected her to say, "Bring out your dead, bring out your
Yeah.
Right,
dead."
right,
Interesting enough, her key card is green.
Yeah.
right.
The new in the department name is a weird phrasing I find, but nutrable means fostering or raising animals. The big question is she mentioned husbandry tanks, and those are specifically for fish.
Mm-hmm.
So
Hmm.
how you get from goats to fish, I don't know, unless it's some sort of, as people have been speculating, cloning technology. So they might be, raising embryos in fishing and husbandry tanks. It's a possibility. And I'm just curious to see if this is a one-off appearance for these characters, or are they going to be features in the series again going forward? I mean, there's been a lot of characters, and especially in this episode, that I didn't think we are really going to see again that are popping up. So it's pretty cool how the show keeps incorporating all these characters into the show.
I I can also say, watching all these videos that I watch, they all appear to be female goats. Like,
Okay. Um, so like I said, I know we got to wrap it up soon.
we need to talk for another hour.
Mark decides that because he's talking, he sees we had kind of forgotten I had about a cell. And so she's back and she says, I've made it better. And Mark decides that yes, he will be reintegrated so that he can find his wife. And we get through, I was like, this is not very high tech equipment. This looks really slipshod. This is really, really crazy. And the questions we slowly get. So it appears that by the end of the episode, Mark is now been merged.
Right.
Thoughts, Lou?
Yeah, it's, the show always does great shots,
Yes.
and the shot of Mark on the table and Petey asking him, "Who are you?" is a great way to end the episode. I'm
Mhm.
super surprised that we've advanced to this point in the story already. I mean, I always expected Mark to get reintegrated at some point, but to have it happen in the third episode of the second season when there seems to be a lot of ground to cover still is a big surprise. Whether this reintegration is going to be permanent or just temporary, we'll have to find out.
Mhm.
The character's name, Asal Ragabi, like I had to look it up because when I heard it, I thought it was Saul
Mm.
Ragubi. So I had to look up the spelling because I thought that's a man's name. So her character is, again, deliberately vague
Mhm.
as to her motivation. So we can speculate a lot of things about her. They really make if we already didn't think reintegration was dangerous enough basing on what happened to Petey, seeing Mark's right hand tremor like that, shake like that when she tried first doing it, makes me nervous. And like you said, Jesse, it seemed very shipshod. All the equipment was like very, sort of like put together from rejects and hand-me-down kind of things. Not very high tech, but I did like it looked like sand, but I thought it was what should have been actually like metal filings or something, so you could see when she was moving the wand around that was generating the magnetic field that you would have seen those like the
Mhm.
filings moving around and matching what was going on. And of course, the sine waves, bringing the two sine waves together is a great visual for showing reintegration. But I'm just totally stunned that they've got to this point already with the Mark character. I don't know if his mother's name was Fern Scott or
Burnt
Mhm.
Scout.
Fern Scout.
Yeah.
That's an interesting name. Again, the names of some of these characters are quite interesting, and
Yeah.
I always pay attention to names because names usually have, if the writers are, Coming from the same school of thought I am, names are very important, not just for their sound, um, and the projection of what they want to do. Like Mark Scout is obviously, you can read a
Yeah.
lot into that. But names have power. If you know a character's name, that gives the other character a lot of power. Because if you're in a room and somebody knows your name, but you don't know who they are, you always feel like you're at a disadvantage, right? So
Yeah.
the show's doing that quite well. So yeah, I'm really surprised at where the episode ended, and it it
Mhm.
really elevated the episode overall for me that they went to this point with the Mark character already.
Okay. Karen?
Yeah, I agree. It really feels like an accelerated timeline. I'm kind of happy for it because that means we're going to get a lot of information and maybe more answers than we thought we would.
Yeah.
And I know they're going to leave stuff hanging because we
Yeah.
do have a season 3 coming.
Yeah.
So the implication that we're going to get an unsevered Mark,
Yeah.
and I feel like that's great. I want to talk about a couple other things before we end. So you
Yeah,
go,
I think it's moving really careful. And
sorry.
so we didn't even get to Milchek getting photos, paintings that where they've
Oh my
kind of moved
goodness.
everything to where
Yeah.
they look African American.
Look,
Um,
I have to go, but that doesn't preclude you guys from continuing the discussion without me. Don't feel
mhm.
constrained by my heading out. And
Okay.
I love the episode. Can't wait to see what happens next week. And I hope the listeners out there are enjoying our water cooler conversations about this show, which is quite intriguing at this point. So you
Agreed.
guys take it away.
All right,
Finish
sounds
off
good.
with Milchek. The only other
Okay.
thing I'm going to mention quickly is Natalie has a very expressive mouth, smile, and
Yep.
it's what she uses to express emotion. I want
Yeah,
to
I
talk about
agree.
that.
Yeah.
Anyhow, take care, guys. I'll
Okay,
catch you next
thanks.
time.
Okay.
Yep, bye
Okay,
bye.
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 All right, so Karen, we'll talk about that and then we'll wrap it up.
In
Okay,
the
so go
Irving
ahead. Yeah,
painting.
talk about that, please.
Yeah, the paintings.
Yeah.
Uh, I feel like Milchick is very weirded out by it.
Mm-hmm.
He does hide them away at the end of the episode.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think he and Natalie might have a thing. So,
Yeah.
and again, we see that the board does not interact with anyone. There's lots of speculation that maybe the board is kind of an AI thing, or, is it just one person? So I think that there's a lot of implications around that.
Yeah, I think
Um,
and I do think there is a little like Natalie is better. Like Milchek can't, when he smiles, it doesn't add his eyes. She tends to be her whole face.
on the smile, her eyes also do that thing. It
Yeah.
says, yeah.
And I also wonder sometimes, is she really talking to the board
Right,
or is
right.
she just,
Yeah, there's a lot of speculation about the board, and I hope we
yeah,
get at least some answers as to what they're
yeah,
doing.
yeah, she
She's
is. I
hotter
agree.
than Helly.
Yes,
I'm
I agree.
sorry.
Yeah. And then you want to talk about Irving.
Yeah, Irving goes to the O&D department
Yeah.
because they have said to him, you're familiar with them already, so take the picture there. He's not sure whether he wants to go or not. O&D is like the graphics department. They
Yeah.
make all the signs, and apparently they make all those pictures that are
Hmm.
hanging around, like,
Right.
all the Kier pictures. And they do other things because one of their things is exporting
Yeah.
something. They use 3D printers for that. So that's
Hmm.
not the signage, it's not the paintings. There's a lot of stuff there. And the fact that she sees Irving's pictures and has mentioned now, what is it? She says, why do you know about this? Oh, the exports hall. How do you know about the exports hall?
Yeah.
So there's another drop in they've given us. And I mean, I just love that
Hmm.
Felicia loves that Irving has come to see her.
Anything else we need to cover?
I think we're
Okay.
good.
Yeah. All right. So we'll be back next week. Thank you guys for following along. Please give us feedback. How can they, Karen?
This Lou is Lou W. Sitzma on all social media platforms. His channel is also Lou's Reviews, where you can see our Babylon 5 podcast, and our channel is JKL Media Reviews on YouTube.
All right. With that, we're going to call it.
What about you?
Oh, I'm at Jesse Jackson DFW on Twitter and at X. You can hear me talk music on Set Listing Bruce and Perfectly Good Podcast. We are covering Next Stop Everywhere, Doctor Who, and I am excited to be back talking more Severance next week.
Me too. I'm gonna go nuts.
Yes.
And
Scene.
The proceeding has been a JKL Media production.